Hello and welcome to the demo lesson. I want to show you how I teach in this short demo lesson, both in my physical classroom and online. So here we go with some simple examples of points that I teach in my school. Let's start with a very simple word, is. Now many people have tried to learn Spanish and found the word is in a dictionary and learned it as es. And then they've used that word for every situation they've wanted the word is and found that it doesn't work. And this is because in Spanish we have two words for is. We have es and we have está. Why two? Well, if you look at está, it has a T in it, and the T is for temporary. So that one is used for situations where you want a temporary word is. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, if I said Pedro is Spanish, is that permanent or temporary? Well, that's permanent, so because Pedro was born a Spaniard, so it would be Pedro es español. But if I said Pedro is in Germany, that's a temporary situation because he could return, so that would be Pedro está en Alemania. The problem is that a lot of people have just learned one word for is, and they use that one word for every situation, and this is wrong 50% of the time. Mind you, even though we have two words for is, we actually have a quarter of as many words as you guys, and there are many Spanish words that don't have a translation into English and vice versa. Now, for example, the word get, which is a word that you use all the time in English, there isn't actually a Spanish word for get. If you go into the dictionary and you look up the word get, you'll find page after page of information rather than telling you that there isn't a word for get in Spanish. You have to use something else. So what would you say as something else? What do I mean? Well, if I said I'm going to get a new car, in Spanish, there is no such word, so what are you really going to do? If you're going to get a new car, you must substitute that get with a more precise word, because in Spanish, we're a lot more direct than you are in English. If I was going to get a new car, what would I say? Well, I'm going to buy a new car. There is a word for buy in Spanish, so I will replace the get with the word buy. If I said I'm going to get myself a sandwich, would I use buy in that situation? No. If I was at home and I said I'm going to get myself a sandwich, I would replace the get with make. I'm going to make myself a sandwich, which obviously in Spanish there is a word for make. Normally in my physical classroom then I say, what if I wanted to say to my wife, get me my wallet? And somebody would put their hand up and say, fetch. And I'd say, I'd like to see you say that to my wife. I mean, my wife is German, but she's not a German shepherd, and saying fetch to her isn't going to really work. So what would work? Well, there are multiple versions, anything from bring to take to grab, any word, because get does not exist. Now, if you look it up in the dictionary, you will find the first definition a dictionary normally gives you is obtain. Obtain, in my opinion, is the worst possible translation, because I would not say to my wife, obtain me my slippers, or I'm going to obtain myself a sandwich, I'm going to obtain myself a car. So this is where you have to learn the correct words. So, how many different words do you need to know? To speak a level of fluent Spanish, there are 100 doing words or 100 verbs that you need to know. 100 may sound like a lot, but 100 words can be learned very, very quickly. An example of these 100 words you need to know is, for example, 5 of them. We have fumar, to smoke, trabajar, to work, estudiar, to study, dar, to give, and pasar, to pass or to come in. So first of all, you need to know these basic words and what they actually mean. Then my job is to teach you how to put these different words into different uses and tenses without knowing that you're actually using tenses. Because so many people have been put off by technical words like imperfect tense, preterite tense, etc. You don't need to learn all of those words. I address all of those tenses in a very different way. For example, to teach all of my students the past tense, I teach them, you know the pop group ABBA? Well, I teach my students that ABBA, the pop group, but only one B in my version, is what you would use in Spanish to put any AR verb, verbs that end in AR, like those ones you have on the screen, in the past tense. So if I got the verb to smoke and I wanted to turn the verb to smoke into the past tense, I take off the AR and then I put ABBA on the end of it, making it fumaba. What have I done? Remember, ABBA was famous in the past. We use word association for you to remember this. When was ABBA famous? ABBA was famous in the past. So when you take the last two letters off fumar and you add aba, you make it fumaba, which is now in the past. So you've made it into I smoked, or I did smoke, or I used to smoke. Any of those three translations, because we have fewer words than you guys do. So if I wanted to say I smoked, or I did smoke, or I used to smoke, yo fumaba would be the way to say it. If I wanted to say I smoked for 20 years, yo fumaba para 20 años. Now the same with trabajar, which is to work. So if I decided I wanted to say I worked in England for 20 years, or I worked in the north of England, anything like that, you take off the last two letters, the AR, and you stick aba on the end of it. And you would say yo trabajaba en Inglaterra. Now that was a bit of a mouthful. So I worked in England, or I did work in England, or I used to work in England. Yo trabajaba en Inglaterra. Because think about it. I used to work when you're talking about the past, isn't it? Used to work, past tense. Now let's talk about fluency. This is the bit I like everybody to understand to become fluent. You do not need to know every single word in the language to become fluent. You need to know the essential words and how you can use them to say anything you like. It's not just about endings and verbs. We also learn about the culture and how many times in Spanish we sound very direct. I know when we're talking, we sometimes come across in a way that English people wouldn't say things because we're very straight to the point. And you'll hear Spaniards when they're at the bar saying, dame la cuenta. Now, dame, which you guys hear as one word, dame, but it's actually two words because we've used the verb dar, to give, and we've left off the last letter to make it an order or a command, to tell somebody to do something. All you have to do is leave off the last letter of the verb. So if the verb was dar, to give, and you drop that r, it becomes a command. So you're saying da, da. But when you say give me, what happens to the me? What do you think? It's one word, dame, it's joining together, but it's actually two. They're saying, give me the bill, dame la cuenta. And there's no gap between any of the words. So that is what you are going to hear Spanish people saying. In Spain, can you say, can I have the bill, or can I have a coffee? It is wrong. You can't say that. Can I have, puedo tener, is not correct. You can translate it word for word, as Google will, but can I have is not correct. Google will tell you, puedo tener for can I have, but I'm telling you it needs to be corrected. It's not what a Spaniard would ever say. We have multiple ways of asking for things in Spain, but they're much more direct and they're much more straight to the point. And that's why I always tell my students not to Google things and not to look up words in dictionaries, because they're going to be looking up words, but they're not going to be the ones that are used in the same way as Spanish people use them in English. And that's why my job is all about that, to obviously help people word things the correctly. Of course, a dictionary is sometimes necessary. A phrase book is never necessary, okay? Phrase books are not compatible with my course. A phrase book is absolutely fine if you're going to Thailand and you want to say, where is the nearest VD clinic? But in Spain, when you're learning Spanish, you do not need a phrase book, because it will not help you learn these endings that we've been discussing in the language and the overall structure. And I know it does sound direct, and I know that give me the bill to you guys might sound rude, but trust me, it isn't. You can garnish it with a por favor at the end if you wish to do so. It's not just verb endings that we talk about in the course. I also explain how words work. Remember, we don't have as many words as you have. For example, the word in Spanish for cat, gato. Now I tell you that the ending ito makes things smaller. It shrinks things. So a gato is a cat. So if you put ito, ito, on the end, it makes a gato into a gatito, so cat becomes a kitten. There is no Spanish word for kitten apart from gatito, which means little cat or baby cat. So if you've got a perro, which is a dog, again you put the ito on the end and you make it into a perrito, which is a little dog. Now that can mean that it's small, or it can mean also that it is a puppy, okay? Again, if you go into Google and you look up puppy, you'll find cachorro, which is also a baby tiger, so which is a cat, the exact opposite of puppy that you were talking about. So please bear in mind, one thing is what Google gives you and the other thing is what we use on the street, okay? Like a puppy, a perrito. I'm sure you will know señora is a lady in Spanish, and a señorita is a little lady, young lady. So ito on the end now, as we've used before, has become ita. So why has it become ita? Because it's the feminine version. Ito is the male, ita with an A is the female. So señorita. What is a señorita? It has nothing to do with being married, okay? Something many people have mislearned. A señorita is a lady who is smaller or younger. I'm not going to say what age, because I can tell you my wife is already past the señorita age, but I'm not going to tell her that. Such things like that are also very well explained in the course as cultural points and common mistakes. Think of a simple thing like your name. In Spain, when you're filling in a form, you'll see that they're asking you for your first name, and then they want to know your nombre, okay, your first name, and then the form will ask you for your first surname, okay, and your second surname, your first apellido and your second apellido. What's that all about? Well, apellido being surname, you see, in Spain, everybody has two surnames. So when you fill out a form, they want both of your surnames. The problem is that you guys don't have two surnames, which is an issue. And for those of you already living in Spain, I'm sure you've encountered a situation where you've been to the doctors or to the hospital and they've called you out by that middle name that nobody ever uses. Let me give you an example. Suppose we had a Spaniard called Pedro Samper Lopez in that case, okay? He's got two surnames because he's Spanish. And say he meets a woman called Maria Carrasco Sanchez, okay? Now she's got two surnames as well because she's Spanish. Now the couple fall in love, they get married. In Spain, when you get married, your name does not change, okay? Instead, the name that are given at birth in Spain is the name that you will be buried with. The name on your birth certificate will be the name on your death certificate, unlike in England or Ireland, etc. Women traditionally take on their husband's surname, where in Spain you do not do that. So the name that you are given at birth, for example, a woman given the name at birth, stays with her forever. In Spain, when you have a child, you give both surnames, one from the father and one from the mother, to that child. So imagine a couple were talking, the couple we were talking about a moment ago, imagine they had a little boy and they decided to call the little boy Luis. Well, the little boy Luis would get the first surname of his father, okay, so he will be Luis Samper, and he would get the first surname of his mother, making it in second place, making him Luis Samper Carrasco. This naming method happens for both boys and girls. So then a few years later, they decided to have another child. Well, this time it's a girl, and they called the girl Anna. Anna would then, just like her brother, get her father's first name first, making her Ana Samper, and then her second surname from her mother, her mother's first surname, making her Ana Samper Carrasco. So in Spain, you only share the surname with your siblings, brothers and sisters. The problem is that English people, when you come over and you hand over your passport to a Spaniard, if some of you have a little middle floating name, I don't, I'm just James Bretherton, but there are a lot of you that have a middle name, a little middle name, and a Spaniard sees your passport with three names and they assume that that name on there is the same in Spain, where everybody has two surnames. They assume that your middle name is your surname. And once that's been written down on a form as your first surname, it can never be corrected. So say, for example, imagine a lady coming to Spain. Her name is Marianne Mackenzie. Marianne Mackenzie hands over a passport while trying to set up documentation here in Spain. They look at her passport and they assume that Mary is her first name, Anne is her father's surname, and Mackenzie is her mother's surname, even though we know this is not the case. They write them down on the form and it's wrong. What should Mary Ann Mackenzie have done? When filling out that form with her nombre, she should have put Mary Ann on her first surname, Mackenzie, and she should have left that blank on the second surname because no British person has two surnames. Same with me, because my parents are both English, I have a British name, so even though I've lived in Spain virtually my whole life, of course my Spanish friends call me Jaime, and my mother used to call me Jaimito, on a form I write down as my nombre James, on my surname Bretherton. On my second surname, I leave it blank because I do not have a second surname. So that is critical difference between English and Spanish names. And this is why so many people can't understand when Marianne Mackenzie is at the doctor's. They'll come out with a form and say, Senora Anne, and no one's responding, and she's there thinking, who's Senora Anne? And it's her, because at some point somebody thought Anne was her first surname. Such things like this I explain in my course, not just how to speak the language, but also how things work in Spain. If this interests you and you want to start learning Spanish with me, you can buy online core lessons in packs directly from the website in the Buy Lessons Here section. Then you can watch the streaming lessons wherever you are in the world at the time of your choosing, day or night. You can purchase them in packs of 10, or most commonly nowadays people purchase the 50 pack. The first question often you'll be asked with these is, why don't you have a beginner's, intermediate and advanced course? Why do I have to start with the core spoken Spanish course? It's because my focus is on everyday spoken Spanish. It's common for people to spend so much time learning Spanish vocabulary in 10-minute daily sessions with tutors and night schools, and still they can't string sentences together, and they melt down when they start talking quickly, when a Spaniard talks to them really quickly. So in my carefully designed course of 50 core lessons, I teach students the structure of the Spanish language and how to construct sentences simply and quickly in conversation. Fluency is all about speed, which comes from a very simple approach. Each of the 50 lessons come with streaming video. The average video length is 45 minutes, and it comes with the notes in PDF or Word for you to be able to read on the screen, download and print. And each lesson can be watched as often as the student wishes, on a mobile phone, on a tablet, on a computer. And throughout the course, there are a variety of self-assessment tests and additional support materials. There's an easy-to-access tutorial support. Advanced and intermediate students can note that online core lessons come with a cast iron guarantee that if a student can list the lessons in a block in which they did not learn anything, in which they learned nothing, no questions will be asked, and credits for spoken Spanish online lessons at their level will be issued. Then students will roll on to the second part of my course, which is the intensive spoken Spanish practice lessons. Now, these are to create your journey towards fluency. This spoken Spanish block of 50 lessons has a variety of formats. Each lesson has 2 or 3 videos. The average lesson is 75 minutes and they are very intense. So many students do 1 video daily to avoid brain melt. The real focus on these spoken Spanish lessons is tuning your ear so that you can understand the even faster spoken Spanish that you are confronted with daily. Across these lessons, there are 11 Spanish speakers aged 7 to 70 with a wide variety of regional accents. There's a wide variety of lesson types, from game shows to quizzes, and some lessons that require pre-watching preparation. Additionally, there are many bonus lessons with Spanish expressions, keyword quizzes, a very addictive Spanish numbers game, the real solution to numbers on the fly when they're coming at you very, very quickly in sentences. And because it focuses so much on the spoken Spanish, this course does not align with any standard academic course. However, the completion certificate issued holds weight in the Extranjero Residencia renewal applications because it's proof of your integration efforts. Payment terms for online lessons: you can pay the total amount today or pay for the course over 4 months in monthly installments. The first quarter today, and then using your credit card or debit card, the options will present themselves to you at the checkout. The significant advantage of doing my course online is that you can choose the speed that you wish to progress, because in my physical school, all of my students have 1 lesson per week of 1 hour, whereas if you're doing this remotely online, you can do as many lessons a week as you wish. You can take a lesson delivery every day or even every 2 days. It will be there for you. There will also be more lessons for you to do if you want more than 2 a week. Somebody who wants to put the time and effort in and complete all 50 lessons in as little as 1 or 2 months. In fact, we're increasingly finding intermediate or advanced students local to the school push through these and join my spoken Spanish physical classroom after that. You can go through them quickly if you've got a level and then join the classroom. If you want to take it easier, you can go slower than the average pace. It is totally up to you. There are revision exercises and tests, and homework will be there as well. You can watch each lesson as many times as you wish. There's a link to buy online lessons, or if you'd prefer classroom option, you can register from the website top menu. If you'd like more information, please watch the About course video. If you need any further questions, don't hesitate to contact me and I will gladly give you any more details you want. Thank you very much for spending the time with me. Bye for now.